in my computer. Hopefully I have enough room on my memory. All right, it looks like we're recording. All right, I'm gonna share my screen. Let's see what I got here. All right. All right, so can everybody see my screen? Am I good?
Yep.
Okay. My name is Adam Kubey. I teach AP Government, and also I teach Civics for 12th graders. It's a requirement for graduation at my school, and I think in all of California. I teach in the Bay Area. I teach in Daly City right now, but I've taught across the Bay Area, and I've been teaching for 15 years. And I'm originally from Chicago. I've taught the beginning of my career in Chicago, and that's where I'm originally from. My email is there. Please email me if there's something you see on the slides or you hear something that you would like more information about, and I'm more than willing to share. Or I can hook you up with the organizations who do the work of the curriculum work or the professional development work and get you the information to those people so they can help you, support you. Let's see. So the project requirements, and we've all known that it's something new that was added to the AP Government class in the rewrite. Can somebody read that for me, because I'm having screen issues? Does somebody read the project requirement for me?
Yeah, Adam, I can do it.
Thank you.
It says the required project adds a civic component to the course, engaging students in exploring how they can affect and are affected by government and politics throughout their lives. The project might have students collect data on a teacher-approved political science topic, participate in a community service activity, or observe and report on the policy-making process of a governing body. Students should plan a presentation that relates their experiences or findings to what they are learning in the course.
All right, so what most of us in the field would call that an action civics requirement. And I think what's been discussed, with the rewrite, it's a untested, I guess how do you assess that, and how do you make sure that teachers are doing it? So I've been pushing for action civics. It's part of my teaching for the 15 years I've been teaching, to have that, and I'm happy to have it. And I've integrated it into my class the whole time I've been teaching APGov, and it's nice to see the College Board recognize that it's something that should be part of the course, whether they are testing for it or assessing it and whatnot. So I'm teaching APGov in 8 weeks this year. My course we're teaching quarters. I have 8 weeks to teach everything that I've taught usually in one semester, which is 19 weeks. And I only have 3 days a week plus an asynchronous day to teach. So this was I kind of made myself a calendar to kind of keep track of all my things. And I'm going to kind of go through how I do things, but I had to cut. I had to decide what to cut. I had to decide what to leave in. I had to decide what activities to do with students, what activities to do asynchronously. So know that it was a hard decision to make, to what to leave and what to take out. With Action Civics, we kind of talk about examples, and you see here in this picture from the women's suffrage movement, women advocating for the right to vote. And then you see here today, young people speaking about the issues that are important to them, whether it's climate change or gun violence. And here you see, people how far the eye can see of people advocating for women's suffrage movement, and taking their movement to the street and being actionable in their civic work. And then you see the same thing today with young people organizing marches around the March for Our Lives in DC, around gun violence and for changes to gun laws. And then you see a lot of young people around the world and around the country and different cities and states advocating for different issues. It doesn't have to be just the ones that are listed, but being actionable in their civic responsibility and taking things they're learning in class and taking things that they're important in the community, and really being hands-on with their application of what they're learning. And a lot of people in the Action Civics movement see the power and the possibility of this work. The recent events in our society have brought to light the youth work and the youth awareness and the youth empowerment. But to those of us that have been working in Action Civics, have seen the importance, have seen the power of this work throughout our careers. And so it is, I think that though the work of the students at Stoneman Douglas is exemplary of Action Civics, it does not the only example of it, nor is it the first. This I've taken from the History and Social Science Department here in California, but it's something that comes from the MICVA Challenge. It's derived from that. It's something that comes from the state of California. You see on the left the way that Action Civics kind of spirals, in that you introduce a theme, you introduce a topic, you look at the historical case studies for it, you apply literacy and historical thinking to it, you develop conclusions, and you take action on it. And if you look on the right, you can see the civic action spiral. So where the left is like kind of tied to your theme in your class, the right is the Action Civics, where you research an issue, analyze power, look at historical context and thinking around it, analyze stakeholders, develop and strategize a plan, and then implement it, and then move back around and move within each sphere. I'm not going to take credit for this. This was done by MICVA and also by UC Berkeley in the History Social Science group here in California. But as you'll see, that Action Civics has been something that is taken on by the state of California as a standard within social studies. The C3 framework within California has really pushed the last tier here is taking informed action. So whether it's in any of the social studies classes or AP or regular, really pushing students to take informed action and moving them towards application-based work. In my class, I've taken the units of study, so those 5 units of study for AP and the standards of which they've kind of threaded them. I know that, you know, we got the big binder here that has everything. And as I talked before, I have 8 weeks to teach, and this whole book is standing in front of me to teach. And I've really put my units of study on the bottom there. I've put it into 8 units versus 5. I've different order, but the way I see things is 3 levels: the content level, the analysis and critical thinking and skill level, and the application level. And I think that each builds upon each other. The way I've kind of worked it with my students is like, well, I want them to be able to say, I can do this. I can do content. I can do analysis and critical thinking, and I can do application and taking action. So this week, I've actually had students looking at each of my units that I do, the chapters in the textbook that go along with it, and threading and pulling out the content knowledge, the analysis and critical thinking portions of things, and then the application and Action Civics portions of things. And what they've realized is there's a lot of content knowledge on the AP exam and that they need to know. There's a lot of analysis and critical thinking skills that do. But the application and the Action Civics portion is in that project, and it's not really tested on, or is it assessed per se. So, you know, I think when we're looking at that 8 weeks that I have to do, or many teachers are teaching in abbreviated schedules, that we need to push the content knowledge to the students, that they're needing to do the reading, that they're needing to do the watching the YouTube videos, that they're needing to do really the bulk of that work. And we're going to be teaching them analysis and critical thinking skills, which deals with writing, which deals with data analysis, which deals with all the things on the essays and the looking at the charts, and then really pushing them towards applying an application. I think that this year, with the election being that it is, that students have a lot of opportunities to do that work. I've threaded this out for my students before. I've charted it for them as far as Action Civics. Kendra's on the line here, and she does GC, which is Generation Citizen. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But getting students to see that we're moving from content to skills to application is really important for them to realize the importance of Action Civics. All right, so I was going to stop here and really kind of focus on how I do things, because I think that it's important to see how I thread it within my class. So these are my 7 units. I have the foundations unit, which is unit 1 usually. I have what's called a project soapbox or intro unit to action civics, which is my unit 2. I have political parties, interest groups, media, political beliefs, and behaviors. I know that's like 3 units for AP, but I put it into 1. And then I've threaded nominations, elections, which I pull out, the presidency, the executive branch, and the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. I pull those out, and then I put civil rights and civil liberties. And what I've done is the reason I have them in order is basically because of action civics. So I introduce the U.S. Constitution and talk about constitutional questions and give context to what we'll be learning about throughout the whole semester and how issues have been a part of our government's evolution, giving them some examples. Then the second unit I do student voice, which I let them speak about an issue that they feel is important to them and their community. And from there, we choose one issue as a class from those student speeches that we're going to focus on to be our Action Civics project for the semester. So we only choose one, where some teachers do many. I choose one and then have them do a facet of that as a part of their group's project. And then I start integrating that issue within every unit I do. So one of the things I do in my unit 3 is I chart the political parties and their stance on that issue. We look at interest groups that deal with that class issue. We look at public opinion around that issue and beliefs in that class issue. And then we look at media coverage of that class issue. So instead of focusing on every issue that's out there, we choose that one issue and I thread that one issue throughout my course. Then we look at how the candidates and each people that are running for office and each proposition stand on that issue. We look at voting behavior on that issue. And then I talk about the agencies and what agencies within the executive branch deal with that issue, and then how the president or the executives execute laws around that issue. Then we look at legislative branches and what legislation is there around that issue, and how our representatives have acted and voted on that issue, and then maybe propose new legislation or to work with legislators around getting legislation on the ballot or on the docket. And then we look at court cases and how the Supreme Court and the courts have played a role in those issues, and whether there's a history of civil rights and civil liberties with those issues, and how the courts and really the Constitution has interpreted those issues. So I really thread that one issue throughout the course, that Action Civics issue that we choose, that's a part of their project through the course. These are some examples. I'm gonna skip these and come back to them. And then I get them to work on the election. So these are some campaigns that we've worked on. Barbara Lee here, the mayor of Oakland here. So I've got them campaigning. We've gone to events with different campaigns and we've talked to different candidates about certain issues. And then there's, it's a very transformative change. Before we get to really some examples of how we can integrate this, I wanted to show some students here just to give you an example. The student in upper left was my #1 student in my class. She's the valedictorian, and she felt like her parents said she got a 5 on all her AP exams, and that when she got into my class, that because it was different, she could do really well in the exams, but she didn't know how to apply the information to Action Civics. So her parents actually were happy that I changed the AP course to be more hands-on, because she could get a 5 on the exam, but she didn't know how to apply it to a project. She didn't know how to go out there and be hands-on. The student to her right, this is Julia, the student to her right, James, got a 2 on my AP exam. He did not do very well, but he now has a master's degree and he is working to make Action Civics a big portion of change within Chicago. He is working at universities to help first generation college students, and he really benefited from the Action Civics work. The 2 students here are Itzel and James. James ended up going to Howard. He was one of very few African-American students at my school here in Oakland. He really thought Action Civics was a way of making transformative change in the school around issues of race. And then Itzel, her parents told her that really she wasn't going to college and that she should be preparing for life after high school in the workforce. And she took my Action Civics class and thought, you know what, I can do as well as any other kid going to college. I can get involved. She ended up organizing events with Barbara Lee's office and Bernie Sanders, who visited, and she ended up getting an internship And she was one of the last students in the whole country to go on a trip with John Lewis to the bridge in Selma. And she was the only student in Oakland to go on that. And she was chosen to go because of her Action Civics work. So it was transformative in her change as a senior year of saying, you know what, college and post-secondary education is for me. And all that work was for Action Civics. So just to give you some options of how you can integrate this, the AP with We Service gives your kids credit for it. So if you integrate AP We Service with Action Civics into your AP course, not only will they get the credit from the test, but they can get this AP We Service credit. And there's actually modules, one of which I've helped write and one of which somebody else helped write, which helps you integrate Action Civics into your APGov classroom. And it threads right in. It shows you how to thread it in. And I'll put that link in the chat. And then there's a lot of organizations out there that are out there to help you integrate it. So Generation Citizen worked with the College Board on that integration. MICVA was the original Action Civics organization. They have a lot of projects, including elections work and youth voice work. The CRF, or Constitutional Rights Foundation, has done a lot of work with Action Civics. iCivics, if you haven't heard about them, they do some Action Civics work. And they do a lot of work with the Civil Rights, Civil Liberties, Judicial Branch integration of Action Civics. And then there's a collaborative of Action Civics organizations that are out there. What I wanted to do is kind of find ways that you think these 5 units could integrate Action Civics. I did it my own way, and I was going to share a doc with everybody. But the last thing is I wanted to show you 2 things. This Vote 16 is one thing in San Francisco that a lot of people are doing Action Civics, and I have a couple students who they got into Action Civics and they got involved in this. And then one of my colleagues in Action Civics with MICVA, his name is Andy Canine. Many people know of him as the guy who does the C-SPAN, APGov crash courses right before the exam. And some people say, oh, well, he's just all about the exam. No, Andy does Action Civics. Andy helped get the Suffrage at 17 movement bill passed in Illinois. Him and his students who did Action Civics work, who passed their exams, also do Action Civics. So I wanted to bring up Andy, not because he's one way or the other. He blends both, and he's had success in both. So I was kind of going to have people do this, but I'm going to throw it to the other people for questions and present a little bit about what they do. I just wanted to kind of give you a perspective of how I integrate Action Civics into my course. Sorry, I just wanted to put that out there and then, have it, throw it around for discussion.
Adam, that was really a great presentation, and I honestly, and I mean this sincerely, it's not just a throwaway. I wish I could be a student in your class. It was really well organized. Can you MICVA Challenge is one that I've never done before, had any real experience with. Can you tell us about MICVA?
Yeah, I would say that they're one of the original Action Civics organizations, but the way that they do it, I think, is a multi-pronged approach. They do youth voice, which is what's called Project Soapbox. If you look up Project Soapbox with MICVA Challenge, it's a kind of an introductory Action Civics, which gets students to speak about the issues that are important to them that they think need to be changed on. They do another one, which is Elections in Action, which they get students to work as election poll judges or work on campaigns or proposition work. And then they do a Democracy in Action, which is an Issues to Action project, which is basically what the other organizations do, which is choose an issue, analyze that issue, a plan, and implement of that plan to make change on the issue, and work with community organizations, work with local government officials to implement and make a positive change around the issue. So MICVA's kind of done all 3. Some of the organizations choose one of those types of facets to focus on.
And if I could just ask one more question. When you said you thread an issue through the year, give me an example, 2-3 issues that you've threaded or the one you're going to plan to thread this year.
Yeah, let's just use gun control as an issue with my students. So within Unit 3, political participation, we talk about public opinion around those, polling. We talk about voting behavior. We talk about the political parties, how they have looked at that issue. As far as the next unit with campaigning, is there anything on proposition? Is it a voting issue that people are choosing? Is there a voting block or a candidates that are one way or another on the issue? Then we integrate it into legislation. Is there legislation on the books for that? How do candidates vote on it? How has Congress acted on it? The executive branch, is there any executive orders that have been around it? How does the president enforce laws around that? We look at political interest groups, NRA. We look at the ones, Everytown and students, the Sandy Hook students. Then we look at court cases. We looked at DC versus Heller. We looked at McDonald. We looked at Chicago versus, I'm blanking right now. It's been a long day. City of Chicago court case. I can't think of the name of it right now. And then we look at the history of how the court has ruled on gun cases. So that's just one issue, threading it through the class. And then
and if you didn't do gun control, give me a second issue without showing me how you did it. What would be a second issue?
Education funding.
That's what I was wondering. Okay, cool.
And the other one's really a federalism thing. We talk about that. Like, that's a really good way to show that is on the gun issue. Is it a state issue? Is it a local issue? Is it a federal issue? With education funding, that played a role in that one. How kids look at where's funding come from? How is it state and local? How is it on a federal level? What agencies deal with that on a federal level? What agencies deal with it on a state level? So basically, by choosing the issue, you can bring each of the units that you have into that issue into those units.
Okay.
So I have a quick question. I love how you're threading this, but I know I teach I'm supposed to teach a whole year round. So I'm wondering when the action step comes in, because if I'm doing judicial in March, it's going to be, I'm wondering when should I bring that up, or how do I move the project forward without getting through all the units?
Well, I think the action's in all parts of it. So in the congressional unit, we invite our Congress people and ask them about their stance on the issue or how they voted or if they're supporting it. On the judicial branch, they might visit a court and talk to some lawyers who have dealt with cases around that issue and how do they push forward this. On the executive branch, they might talk with an agency and say, okay, this agency deals with this issue, the Department of Education or the gun issue. It might be ATF, and they might be looking at talking to at that agency and trying to understand how they're working with that and making change with them. With interest groups, they might reach out to a local group and see how they can push forward their agenda or support what they're doing. So the action is happening at all times. It's not kind of at the end. I think that a lot of teachers use it as a capstone and the action only goes after the exam. I really thread it throughout. They're taking action at all times.
Good. I think that's the best way to go. That's the way the students get the most out of the project, I think.
So how much self-direction do you allow for? I assume you scaffold early on,
Yeah.
but by the time they get to the later units, hopefully they are starting to seek out those who they can talk to and learn from. But do you have, how do you foster that engagement part?
Yeah, I mean, I do a real, at the units at the beginning of class, I have a team building unit, a collaboration unit, which is called Unit 0, which MICVA actually has a whole bunch of lessons on that. And so do Generation Citizen, and a lot of the organizations have collaborative lessons on how to do that. And we've kind of talked about that in this AP group. That first session we had about setting a classroom that is empathetic and gets students to work together. Peter, you had that whole starting the school year one. I think that we had a lot of good ideas there that do that. And I think that I get my kids to work in a lot of project groups. And I think that we've talked about that too, about getting students to collaborate and work together, not just kind of being passive listeners. So I think that is very important to set that tone, that they're active in it and that they're going to be working and collaborating with each other inside and outside class on their projects and their learning. So if you set that tone at the beginning, I think that's really important. I kind of want to throw it over to Jennifer, who does MICVA in Detroit, and Renee, I know that you were saying that you do some Action Civics work, and Lisa, you were also talking about that. And I know, Peter, you've talked about PBL. So I just wanted to put the way I do it out there, and then kind of throw it to you guys and how you guys do it, and how you maybe are envisioning how you do it, or what questions come up in your mind while you're putting your toe in it, or you're taking your step towards Action Civics. If any.
Yeah. Go ahead,
I
Lisa.
had a question, but I'll go after you. Oh, okay. Do all your students necessarily agree on the same side of the issue? And I'm thinking
No.
specifically about gun control. Okay.
No, they don't. And that's also important. We do some debate. We do some discussion. Actually, within the gun issue, there were groups that were working to make gun safety a part of it. So there wasn't just gun control. It was, how do we get students who choose to have guns and to choose to do their Second Amendment, how do we get them to do it safer? So, they don't have to agree, and even the action, they don't have to agree. And that's another interesting thing, is getting groups that are doing actions that are different. They might even be, against each other, but they're doing different things and working with different people for that are both active in their own way.
Yeah, Adam, I'll jump in. Like you were mentioning, we're entering our third year of doing Project Soapbox, and our ultimate plan with Carrie is to take this to be the Action Civics steps 1 through 6. But we just got our training, we're learning how to do it, and in APGov, what we do is I introduce it in the legislative branch unit. Once they've gotten to know each other, they've spent a semester together, we teach it over the course of the whole year. And when they're learning about legislation, they find the issues that they're interested in. We spend that week and a half, almost 2 weeks, I would say, researching issues, finding their videos, learning how to find a voice, learning about rhetoric, and then bringing it together. And then the class does 2 things. This past year, we voted on an issue. But unfortunately, this took place about 2 days before we shut down. But we voted on a class issue that we were going to take through the rest of the steps. And I think we would have been successful this year, especially this class. But on the same side, we also were allowed to send to our competition at the DIA. We're allowed to send up to 10 students per school. And so the students not only vote on what issue do they want to focus on in the classroom, but they also vote on what is the voice of our generation, what is our class standing for. And so in this case, we did things like food waste, and we did plastic and ocean. One person did college and the expense of college, especially for those who are first generation college students. So that resonated with me when you were explaining your student James from Chicago. But this year, our goal is with Carrie, and I'm texting with her as we're talking, to integrate just like you're talking about, because with the platform that we currently have, this virtual online platform, they have the ability to do research at their fingertips right away. So as we're discussing in class, even though we see each other every other day, the topics that are coming up in the convention and the topics that are coming up with Black Lives Matter, which many of my students are involved in, they're seeing that this goes beyond what we do for 60 minutes every other day, and what can we bring to, and how can we vote on a class issue. I think that's going to be the one problem this year, is that there's going to be so many issues they feel passionate about. How do we say they're all equal, they all are important, and this is the one we're going to focus on, without them getting frustrated that theirs wasn't picked. But I'm excited to have you, and if you wouldn't mind sharing with us your document of how to integrate that. Just listening to you as you plan through gave me hope that this can be done virtually.
Yeah, it took a lot of thinking of how to integrate this virtually, but the breakout rooms are huge. Getting students to work in breakout rooms as groups, and you can just put them in there and then move them around. That was huge. The other thing is Google Docs, if sharing different things and getting students to access them and work on them, either synchronously or asynchronously. Actually, that works with hybrid learning too. So if you're in a classroom and you have them in front of you, they can work on that while other kids are also integrating and accessing it from outside the classroom. So, I think that Action Civics does have, it works well with the hybrid and at-home learning, because you can have the kids working on that. And also, asynchronous learning. Kids can be calling a legislator, writing a document, and then shipping it to another student, having them edit it, ship it to another student who is deciding how to get it to the person. So I think that students are deciding when to work, and they're also can work asynchronously. And I think Action Civics they can work that way.
Hey, Adam, I want to ask you a question. So, I've been a huge fan of CRF's Civic Action Project for years. Probably over a decade easily, and yet, I am wondering about this kind of core question you're raising here. Teachers, online environment, will they feel that this is going to be somehow more difficult to get small groups to work? I don't think so. I think that's a great opportunity for them. Interest group, how does an interest group work online today? Everybody does it anyway. But as an alternative, here's what I want to ask you, and Jennifer, I want to ask you the same thing, Lisa as well, Kendra, all of you tonight. So I've been experimenting the last few years with giving my students opportunities in small groups to, as an alternative to the Civic Action Project, to trying to affect policy, an alternative to that, to create some kind of video, a Tom Ritchie knockoff video, or an Adam Norris, or a Carrie Lamanna, or a Kelsey Falkowski knockoff video. So that what their job is really is to educate APGov students nationwide on topics that these other guys haven't yet addressed. Like, for example, not one of them yet has really done the presidential power of pardon. And so a group of students working on that, a little less taxing in terms of trying to affect policy. Would you guys consider that fulfilling the Civic Action Project requirement? A knockoff video like that?
Well, I think Kendra can speak to this. Our organization that we've worked with Generation Citizen, advocacy is one level of Action Civics, is like advocating or promoting a cause. But I think that they're also wanting students to be involved with legislation, petitioning, trying to help get something passed through, or writing legislation, or at the same time they could be working with groups of organizations or nonprofits to fundraise and whatnot. So I think there's a lot of different ways that students can get involved and take action. And on the other point you were saying about assessing students, I have a sheet that has every student's name on it, and then each day they put in what they're doing on they reflect on what they've done and what their next steps are going to be. And then that is how I assess them. At the end, we look at their whole project, how they got done, and then what they did along the way. And they have to show progress towards their goal, and they have to show progress towards their changing of their strategies, using different strategies. And as they hit a hurdle, or as they successfully get something, what is the next challenge? What is the next thing they're going to do? The project doesn't end with, okay, I'm successful, I sent the letter. No, it doesn't. You got to continue on. So I have them chart their progress, and that progress chart is open source for all the students. So the students are collaborating together and say, oh, well, this is what this other kid's doing. Okay, I got to reach out to them on this. Or I'm working with this one other student, and we're working this way, but this is where we kind of split off. So, it's taken from a lot of teachers that do PBL, a lot of teachers that do workshop, where kids are kind of workshopping in different areas and helping each other, and peer working. So that's kind of how I stole it from them.
I like that idea. I like that.
I know that before COVID, this last year was my most successful group, especially on the collaboration part. We utilized online platforms like Trello, like Google Docs, like where you can upload film and edit it. And so I think that to go virtual with action-based projects learning, I think it's the next step, honestly, in that. The only issue we have with in my district right now is making sure that there's equity among access to technology, Wi-Fi, laptops, that kind of thing. So I think, practically the logistics of it might be harder, but I think the students might buy in a little more because they get to flex their tech knowledge, and they know how to resource, or not resource, they know how to spread awareness. They're very savvy with most of the online platforms. That part of the projects that I have found have not been the most difficult to get off the ground. What's been difficult is trying to teach them the ins and outs of the political institutions, and the simple stuff like, how does a bill be formed, or who is your legislator, how do you qualify to vote or qualify to run. And so those are the parts that I'm going to try and dive in deeper for, like, how can we make that jump out to them digitally? Because in past years I've had representatives come and talk to in class, come to talk. I've had organizations and representatives, and so they had that people-to-people connection, and it helped move the project along that way. So I guess what I'm saying so far is, for the semester coming up for a PBL, it's going to be crucial to get the buy-in early, I think, and we're still trying to figure out how that's going to look, I think.
To piggyback on what Kendra is saying, I think with Zoom and virtual learning, getting guest speakers is pretty easy. They just jump on in your Zoom and they can speak to your class about their part of the Action Civics project. You can put them in a breakout room, or you can have them talk to the whole kids. And then Peter, we've talked about, I know that me and you both work with NPR and KQED, and they're doing a lot to get students to do documentaries, podcasts, videos, and stuff like that. So I think that, and students can do that from home, and they can record, and they have access on their computer to do that, or their phone. So I think that that also plays a role, that they can use the power of that to get the message out there about their projects or the work that they're doing.
I love what you said there, Kendra, about the next step, taking that worked for me. That's a good line and something to keep in mind. Yeah. Because that's what it is. Let's take the next step. I mean, it's where it's headed anyway.
Lisa and Renee, did you guys want to say about how you do your Action Civics, or what you're doing that is Action Civics oriented to integrate into your AP curriculum?
I have not felt super strong about it, and that's why I was so excited to hear about Action Civics. I just had them in groups. Not this year, because this year was just a lot, but the year before, when I went and did the AP grading, I had them in groups, and they picked a topic and they wrote to the legislature. I mean, it was kind of at the end of the year. But this is actually more than PBL, which I think would be, than a pure PBL, which I think would be really hard to start online. This is something that I could do, because I am only going to have a semester this year. I usually have a year. And so I like this, thinking it's helping me organize my.
Do you feel like that when they wrote the letters to legislators, that they were not only learning how to write, because like we talked about writing at one of the workshops, and how AP writing versus other forms of writing, do you feel that that writing was, when they were doing that, they were reflecting on their writing and crafting their writing, and then also getting feedback from whoever they wrote the letters to, and they kind of saw the power in their work?
I feel like they started to do it, and then they got senioritis and just kind of, they set it up well. And that's why I like the thought of doing it from, second unit on, because that would give time to get buy-in. And these kids, like the last couple of years, they're so much more interested in affecting change than they ever have been before. I think it really started with Parkland, is when I really saw students start to really, and I've been looking for a way to harness their energy, and I like that there's resources online that.
Yeah, I agree totally. Renee, did you want to jump in, or you? Yeah, please do.
Sure. So my project is mock Congress, and I have a full year. So in my ideal world, where I haven't quite been able to make this happen, I do political beliefs and behaviors second, kind of on the old schedule. I really like that. And I would assign students a district and a party then, and they would do their research on their district using census data, other resources to figure out what are things that people in that district feel strongly about, how should I represent them. And then we come back to that in January when we get to the legislative branch where students are writing bills, working in committees to amend whatever bills, pass them on. Then we have a full-on mock Congress. I started dividing the room. They elect a Speaker of the House and a minority leader. I've really wanted to try to get them like planning a little bit more on that. And then in the in the linkage institutions unit, when we talk about parties, I wanted them to start figuring out a party platform. So that comes before that. Then we have the mock Congress in the 3 branches unit. And then we start after Labor Day and go till end of June. So I've got lots of time after the AP test, and trying to keep them engaged is always a struggle. So one thing that I've been able to make work well was one year we had midterm elections, and they had to design a poster. They had to put together some issues to advertise, and then they had to give a speech to their classmates, not to their constituents, but had to work on what they were going to say, how they were going to sell themselves. I would love to figure out how to make them do casework, like coming along and then boom, oh, you have this problem that a constituent needs you to solve. What are you going to do and how are you going to do that? So that's like, I would like to execute all of that well, and then that's kind of like my next step.
Renee.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Peter.
Renee, so I'm hearing you work it in before the exam, right?
Yeah, so it's mostly done before the exam. I can it gives me an option to come back to it later.
Yeah.
After the exam, I've done different things every year. It really just depends on the interest of the class, because I have 6 weeks with them sometimes, and they are just not interested in anything. So I try to find stuff that if they were really into mock Congress, we'll come back to that. I've done moot court, I've done model UN, so I try to do something. We've done state legislature stuff, so.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the simulation work, I think a lot of teachers do simulation work and the kids really like it, and the kids really get into those roles. And then it's then bridging that simulation work to the real life work. And they can see, okay, we did the simulation, this is what it was like, and now we're going to try it with real stuff, right? Or if they've simulated how a bill becomes a law and they're trying to get people to work together, to collaborate, to craft this bill and get it passed and get it signed by the executive branch. They can work on that on a state level, right? Working with legislators who are also trying to get legislation done and trying to get it to the governor, or trying to get different legislators to sign on, or different interest groups to back that legislation. I think that a lot of teachers do simulation or not, and do action civics or not, but I think you can do both. And I think that teachers that do both simulations and action civics together see the most success, because the students kind of have like a practice run while the simulation, and then the real run when it's the where they kind of maybe go out and practice it within the real government world.
I wanted to add really quick, and this is something that I have learned over the years when doing action civics. They are going to come across barriers. Either they can't get a hold of people, or their legislation or their bill doesn't make traction, or stuff like that. So what I really like about the action civics part is because it is in the real world. So they're seeing the complication that it is to get movement off the ground, especially grassroots. So it really gives them the tools to take it outside of high school and outside of college, and to really enact change, even in the face of, maybe failure or setbacks. If you can give them what they need to move on without you, I think that's the best part of the action civics. And being an APGov teacher, we can get bogged down in the semantics, or we can get bogged down in the curriculum, but if they can't use that effectively outside of the classroom, I think it's a disservice to the students. And I think that's where I'm personally heading with my teaching pedagogy.
Yeah.
Totally agree with you, Kendra. Totally.
Yeah, I was going to piggyback on Kendra. I think that many teachers are adverse to action civics because they feel like it might not get them better scores on the AP exam if it's not assessed. Some other teachers say we just don't have time. there's just too much on the AP exam and don't have time. And then there's the group of people that this is not for, my class is not for this. It's not partisan. We don't get involved in real issues. We just kind of look at different issues and talk about them, but we don't get involved. And I think that we're doing students a disservice by not getting involved in those issues that they choose. It's not, I'm not choosing the issues, the students are. I'm not choosing the stance on the issues, the students are. And then as far as time, I think that what I've seen in my students who have done really well with the Action Civics works, the students that I brought up, that the ones that really get invested in Action Civics while also doing all the other stuff, that they are the most successful at that next level in college and in real life. And I'm old enough now to see the fruits of my labor. You know, as a first teacher, I was kind of like saying, oh, I hope this works. And I was hoping from other teachers that had done it before that it would lead to success. And now I've seen the students who really do the Action Civics work really get involved in it, which the engagement level is high. I'm just gonna say that students really like the projects because they voted on it, they chose it, it's theirs, and they are more able to do well in college. They're more able to do well in life, and they're more likely to be civically engaged and civically responsible. And that is the true test of whether this is working. And so I haven't wavered anymore. I don't. If I ever have to think about it, I look at those pictures. I have a wall in my classroom, Kendra's seen it, that has all the civic work that my students have done. And if I ever wondered, like, is this really what I should be doing? I look at the wall and I see all the success stories and I go, I'm good. And I go back to it. So, you know, I think that, and there's studies that show that, Andy can show you that, that doing Action Civics work will equal better scores in the AP exam because they're thinking critically. And I think the new exam is more aligned to Action Civics, where students have to think about simulations and think about situations. They have to make an argumentative thing. They have to look at different court cases and evaluate how it's going to play together. And then they have to look at data. I always have them do survey data. A lot of the civic organizations have them do surveying and then looking at that data, assessing it, and then making plans based on it. So I can't stress enough that Action Civics actually, the positives are way outweigh the negatives and will lead to better scores, better outcomes for students.
Adam, I agree with you as well. Just 2 words of caution for people who are not yet having gone down that path. But one is, and I'm curious whether you and the others have encountered this, I often found that students, when they tried to come up with what was the goal, what problem, what issue did they want to try to respond to, that often took a little bit of work. They just couldn't decide, or they even couldn't come up with anything. And so, you know, if you go online and you look up, you know, 50 great civic action projects or 50 great stepping up activities or something like that, there's been a lot written about that now. And I just put those in front of the students, and it inspires them. It gives them something to think about. And whether they take on an idea or they tweak it, it sometimes gets them over that hump. But I do find up front there's always that challenge of, well, what issue am I supposed to try to respond to? What policy am I supposed to try to affect? And there's oftentimes just a plug up there. And the other challenge, which I found is really interesting, especially in more recent times, is as societies become more and more polarized, schools were the ideal place. You know, try to bring some new food to the cafeteria, or a planter here, or paint the doors there. But with everything polarized, even these issues become battles. And so I've heard from many school officials, school officials at in other cities, other states, with teachers that I've worked with, you know, they say, hey, we don't mind if you're affecting policy, just not here at school, because if the kids come and they say they want these doors painted blue, we know we're in for a fight, no matter what the issue is. And so you got to figure out how to deal with that. Yeah. Did you get any kind of warning to stay away from school stuff?
So 2 things. One, the student choice, right? There's Generation Citizen has a great couple lessons on consensus building, getting students to find consensus. I had students that wanted to do a greening, environmental reform. And then I had one student that wanted to do education policy change. I put the 2 of them together. So okay. The education policy change included getting students to learn how to green and to learn how to be environmentally skilled. right? So you can get them to find consensus and put things together. And even if the two topics are way apart, you get them to talk about why they've wanted to do one or another. And there's consensus building. As far as touching subjects that are hot button topics,
Yeah.
sometimes we can't choose that. Well, a lot of schools had walkouts around the gun control and gun issue. They have had walkouts around immigration issues here in the Bay Area. They're going to bring it to school. You have no choice around that one. If you can make it, we've talked about this before, the classroom, a learning classroom, an empathetic classroom, a classroom that's reflective on society, where students feel that their voices are heard and they feel that they are able to hear other voices and discourse and discuss and be able to debate, but do so in a way that is trying to find consensus and find common ground, that is a truly democratic classroom. And with Action Civics, you will get that. If you don't bring it into the classroom, you don't discuss it, you push it away, we don't have these discussions, what does that mean for our democracy that students are not even learning how to do it in a way that's constructive? What does it mean for our democracy that students feel that there's places for discussions and school is not one of them? I really worry about that. And I think that most of the people that do this feel that they don't, I don't have arguments I don't have fights in my classroom. I don't have students who don't feel comfortable in my classroom because we've gone through all this stuff. We build on it. We have empathy. We have discussions about team building. And even if they disagree, they understand that this is a learning space and they understand that they're not being disagreeable and they're not taking shots at people because of who they are. But they're having real intellectual conversations. And I think that's what an AP class should be. And so most of my administrators and most of the school boards that I've worked with have seen that. And I invite them in. Come on in, see the speeches, see the discussions, see the conversation. And if you have any problem about it, we can discuss it. But parents have been always for it, supportive. School boards have been, for the most part, supportive as long as, they can defend it.
Nice. Wow, we're at our hour. That's a great way to finish this one off, Adam. That was wonderful.
Yeah, I just a really, really quick to piggyback off of Adam. The kids are going to bring the fire, and the administration can try to subvert it, but really, what the kids will take a hold of it and run with it if you give them enough space. And so far as like worrying about, oh my goodness, I remember one project. I'm not going to go long, I promise, but they tried to get a clearance to do a walkout, and the principal said no, so they just went to the press anyway. And so they got their attention that they wanted, and there wasn't retribution back on the principal because everybody was taken with the Action Civics. They were like, these are kids, these are students using their voice, they're doing peaceful protesting, and it reflected better on the school in the long run. But I'm saying that's it's how the situation turned out. But I think if you're trying to convince admin that this is a policy you need, you can do the practical data-driven routes. But I think what they'll see more is the kids taking charge. And I think any principal worth their salt or any admin will want to see that.
The last thing I want to say is I know there's a lot of those organizations and there's a lot of cost right now about curriculum and whatnot. And I know that a lot of schools are not willing to invest in some of these curriculums. Some of it's free and online, so it's out there. But I want to pitch the College Board AP with We Service, because if you're already doing AP, you can just add on the We Service on top of that. And then that gives your kids AP credit for the Action Civics project. So it's already there. The College Board already has it. You just have to sign up for it and then assess your students using their rubric and give them the credit. So whether they get the AP credit for the exam or not, you can give them the We Service credit and give them credit for their Action Civics projects. And so you would see that, okay, well, if we don't have time to they have to do well on the exam, they can get their Action Civics credit through the We Service. And all that's on the AP website, College Board website. You sign up, they send you the curriculum, and you integrate it how you see fit. And they send you the rubrics, and you grade your students, and you get them their credit. And I've been really happy that College Board has made that step. And they do it for all AP classes. They don't even have to just do it for Gov. They can do it for every AP class. So they can get WeService credit for all their classes.
Wow. Very nice. Well, I think we're going to have to do another one of these somewhere down the road. This was really interesting tonight. I learned a lot.
And I put my email on there on that first slide. If you have any questions, please email me, or you have any questions about the organizations or any of it. I will point you in the direction to who can answer your question if I can't, or if you're looking for resources, I will point you to them and they will help you. These organizations are really helpful, and I've been blessed to work with many of them. I've worked with one with Kendra and MICFA, which Jennifer's working with, and they're all great organizations run by great people who just want to help students and just want to get students involved in their communities.
Well, thank you very much for tonight, Adam. I really appreciate it. And why don't you close it on out?
All right. Thank you very much for everybody. Thank you for the College Board and Peter for putting this together. And you know, I look forward to seeing all you guys at the end of the year and saying that you integrated Action Civics into your classrooms this year. And good luck in the school year. I know this is a tough year for all of us, but you know, we're all very excited to do the work that we've been doing and to tackle the challenges of what's going on.
Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you guys so much.
All right. Good luck. Take care.
Bye, Lisa. Bye, Ken.
Night.
Bye. Thank you. I got a lot out of it.